Hello and welcome to the Flix Forum podcast, where each episode we go back and we look at a Netflix original film in the order of release. However, this is a special bonus episode where we're not going in order, obviously, because we're looking at a 2024 film, which is a spy action comedy thriller called The Union. This one is directed by Julian Farino and stars Mark Wahlberg, Halle Berry, Mike Colter, Adewale Akinnuoye-Agbaje, Alice Lee, Earle Haley and J. Simmons. I'm Jesse, I'm your host. Thanks for jumping on board for this pretty new Netflix film, only been out for a couple of days. As always with our show, we will spoil it as we go the film, so if you are keen on checking this one out and haven't seen it yet, give us a pause and come back a little bit later on, because we're going to get into it. We're going to start off with the Fast Flicks, where we do a quick little summary of what the film is all about. So this one's about a down-and-out guy who's recruited into a world of espionage by his high school flame. I guess it's a bit like a James Bond sort of film, this one. If you're into that sort of thing, then this might be for you. We do talk about how this ended up on Netflix, how the films got there in the first place. So we go to May of 2020, where it was announced that Netflix had purchased the pitch for a title called Our Man from Jersey, which was then retitled to The Union. And I was going to say Mark Wahlberg star, with Joe Barton and David Guggenheim writing the screenplay from a story from Stephen Levinson. We go to May of 2022, where J.K. Simmons, Earle Haley, Adewale Akinnuoye-Agbaje, Jessica DeGao and Alice Lee joined the cast as well. And then we have filming commencing in March of 2022, with shooting taking place in London, New Jersey, and Slovenia. Apparently, the production did cause slight controversy in May of 2022 due to noise pollution and air pollution from filming in Fitzrovia. So then we saw that the filming did continue then into September of 2022 in Ponterosso, Trieste in Italy as well. Berry and Wahlberg, they've been friends for a very long time, more than 30 years apparently, and this is their first film together, and it's highlighted by these youthful real-life photos that they have scrolling over the closing credits as well. So that's a nice little interesting fact on the side as well. Translations around the world for this film: in Portuguese it's called The League. I get it, instead of The Union it's The League, and it makes me think of The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, that film as well, I guess. In Hungarian it's called The Organization. Yeah, these are all pretty lame sort of titles, aren't they? In Italy, it's called Stuck with Our Man from Jersey. Not bad. And in Polish, it's called Relationship. I think they've kind of missed the mark there a little bit on that one. The tagline for this one, it's Old Flame, New Mission. Again, pretty lazy, pretty slack. And obviously, as I mentioned before too, the working title for this one was Our Man from Jersey, which was what it was originally titled. As I said previously as well, from March to August of 2022, it filmed across a variety of locations. I guess there's this one little connection, a Netflix connection, I guess, where there's this scene in the middle of London where they're sort of up on the rooftops of some buildings, and there's this big billboard for Matilda the musical. I know Netflix released a film version of this musical, but I couldn't find it anywhere. There's this scene where Mark Wahlberg's character runs through, a live show, and I'm guessing it was the Matilda show as well. So a little bit of cross-marketing there from Netflix. What are the critics and audiences saying about this film? Not very positive. I would probably say early on at this stage, only a couple of days out, but Rotten Tomatoes sits at 44% on 45 reviews. So that is definitely rotten. Audience even lower at 28%. That's on more than 100 ratings, so quite low. 5.6 out of 10 on IMDb from nearly 7,000 ratings. Letterboxd sits at a 2.3 out of 5 on nearly 5,000 ratings. It's only been logged by about 5,500 people. And Metacritic, both yellow on that traffic light system from the critics and the audience. The critics have it at 45 out of 100 on 19 reviews, and the audience at a 4.1 on 9 reviews in the yellow as well. So, pretty low. So this came out on the 16th of August 2024. What are my early thoughts? I think, it's fine. But it's by the book and by the numbers, I guess. It's almost the type of film that you expect from Netflix these days. Big budget, a big cast that would have been paid big bucks. But it's almost like this screenplay has been spat out by AI. That's where it feels, but that's okay. It's not the worst film that Netflix has ever put out, that's for sure. Let's look at the characters. This film is about Mike and Roxanne. Like, we've got Mark Wahlberg's character, Mike, and Roxanne, Halle Berry's character. They're the main players. So Mike is this blue collar worker who's his life sort of peaked in high school by the sounds of it. I mean, he was dating Roxanne in high school. This is highlighted also by the fact that he keeps sleeping with one of their teachers. He still lives with his mum. He has to start his car with a screwdriver. He drinks at the local bar with all his high school friends. But obviously he's street smart, and that's what this the union, this undercover sort of agency, they want from him. They want someone that can come in and not be recognised, and I guess that's where that's from. But Roxanne, on the other hand, I guess she's sort of the complete opposite of him, because she's been this long time operative for this secret agency, and she seems to be a bit brash. She gave up on college to do the right thing and join this agency and sort of escape the small town that they both come from as well. The other characters in this film, Tom Brennan, he's the boss of the union. He's played by J.K. Simmons. He doesn't get Mike's appeal, but he supports Roxanne's choices. We've got Nick Faraday, and I've obviously said there's spoilers. Nick Faraday, he's this guy that's a part of the union, gets killed off in the first few minutes, but surprise, surprise, in these types of films, he turns up alive and becomes, I guess, one of the softest villains a film has almost ever seen. We've got Juliette Quinn. She's this mystery seller who sort of adds the only real attempt at humour throughout the film, because the laughs in this didn't really land throughout, I guess. And finally, the other crew members from the union, they don't really have anything other than, I guess, their role to play. So you've got Athena, who's this psych evaluator almost. There's Frank, who's this combat coach or physical specialist. This guy called Foreman, who's the IT guy, used to work at Amazon, because I think that's meant to be funny. But other than that, they're just there for to fill the crew. The director, Julian Farino, a lot of TV. I was surprised, hadn't heard of this guy. Did an episode of Brooklyn Nine-Nine, 17 episodes of that Ballers TV show, 2 episodes of the US version of The Office, as well as a couple of episodes of Sex and the City, and the big one here, I guess, is 23 episodes of Entourage, where I'm guessing the Mark Wahlberg connection comes from. The other British guy. The funny thing here, 36 episodes of Coronation Street. It's quite funny as well. It's one of those soap sort of shows. All right, scenes. Let's talk about some scenes. What are some scenes that I liked? What are some ones that I didn't like? We start with the ones that I liked. I think, there's some good bits in here. Bruce Springsteen, anytime a song of his came on, I was up and about. I love The Boss. I thought that was a nice, they probably spent a lot of money on his songs, but that was good. There's a scene where Roxanne sort of cons Mike to go to this park and sort of injects him with a drug to get him to pass out, and he sort of falls down this hill in this park before being picked up and bagged by a couple of her team. I thought that was funny. There's a line, if I run out of ammo, what do I do? Is what Mike says, and then the guy's like, throw something heavy. It was funny at the time. The follow-up, not so much, but it was funny when it first came out. There's a scene where Mike goes into the bathroom to meet this sort of big beefcake guy to do a transaction, and he's sort of, the guy's asking him, where are you from? And he's like, I'm from Boston. Then he's like, oh, do you know Good Will Hunting? It's my favourite movie. And then, he's like, it spoke to me. I thought that was funny too, because obviously the Wahlberg connection there with Affleck and oh man, I can't even think. I'm so tired doing this episode. Anyway, let's keep going. The dialogue between Roxanne and Mike in the car, about her having a go at him for his small town life, and his dad having issues with her being black, and him not seeing his potential. I thought that was really good as well. There's a scene where Roxanne and Mike, they get themselves locked away in this cargo sort of carriage to get on an aeroplane, and she makes this comment about, I'm sorry for not, I'm sorry, I'm not thinking it's small. And he's like, what? Shocked. And she's like, sorry, life, needing to get out and experience it in relation to that moment in the car where she'd had a go about his small town life, and obviously the innuendo. That was a clever play. There's a scene where Mike is on this pillar fighting these bad guys, and he's hanging between these 2 buildings in the sky, and he just takes these 2 guys down. That was clever. There's a scene where Mike gets flung straight into the boot of a car. That was funny. That was quite clever. And finally, there's a scene where Roxanne, she's ready to drive a car into Faraday, and she's like, quick, we're going to jump. She jumps out of the car, and then we cut, and he didn't get out, and he's just sitting there with the airbag in his face. Thought that wasn't bad too. What didn't I like? I think the action in the opening scene, it was exciting, but the whole thing, it just felt a bit amateurish. I don't know, it just didn't feel right. You're meant to have this big moment, this big opening scene that you want everyone on board to get into, and it was fine, but it just sort of felt a bit off. It was a bit weird. There's this big long montage of Mike learning the ropes of the union. That just went on and on and on. Didn't need it. Athena, her death. There was no connection whatsoever to any of those other people inside the union. Sort of like what I touched on before. So it felt pointless. It didn't have that emotional push that you'd want from a death of a character in a film. And finally, Roxanne and Mike, they're in the car. And this, I think I liked the conversation, but the moving background of the car looked so horrible. It just looked like they were sitting on a set. It's worse than like the Hitchcock films from the 60s almost. That's how bad it was. So anyway, that's that part. What's the film trying to say? What are some themes, some ideas, some motifs? I think obviously justice and that idea of doing the right thing and being able to trust people, that's a big thing too, as well as that small town life, having family and friends that will always be there to support you. But that idea, I guess, that need to escape to experience life as well, or having that ability to always depend on and count on someone from this type of life, like real life stuff. We see Mike preparing for this bachelor party and this wedding and that sort of stuff too. Second chances, obviously, we see that Mike gets multiple second chances, and that's because of the street smarts that he has too. Stick with what you know, and it might never be too late to turn your life around, and that's sort of where this film heads with Mike towards the end as well. What did I take away from this film? I've got a few thoughts as we go throughout the back end of this episode. J.K. Simmons and Halle Berry, they're Oscar winners. Mark Wahlberg, Earle Haley, Lorraine Bracco, these are all Oscar nominees. They're in this film. They deserved better. I don't know what it was, but they just deserved better. And I guess the other frustrating thing is, if you read the press about this film from Netflix, and they're talking about, Netflix are like, we want multiple films from this. There's some things in this film that they just leave as loose ends, which are frustrating, because you can still have a sequel for a film, but still close a few things. Like this Quinn character, they let her get away with a big moment that's like, don't forget I live you quote. It's like, oh, well, it's obvious that she's going to come back at some stage. And, they have Mike accepted into the union at the end, and he's given a mission as well. So it's like an easy sequel, ready to go if they need it. And I've touched on this before, the comedy, very little of it worked. And I guess maybe some of that too is, that they play these lines that you almost expect, like Mark Wahlberg, shirt off. Like, is it in his contract that, or at least a shower scene? We get one of them as well. And those cliche lines littered throughout the film that had some connection later in the film that were a little bit frustrating. I guess, I mentioned I liked the line before about, if I run out of ammo, what do I do? Throw something heavy. They follow that up. And there's multiple lines like this, like they talk about Roxanne's never been on vacation. And then they talk about that again. And then there's Mike, who's the screwdriver to get into the cars, just all these little traits that they follow up on. Got a little bit frustrating because it's like, yeah, okay, you're not actually developing the character. Anyway, that's my thoughts. Let's move on. Questions, ponderings. Let's finish this off. I think there's a couple of quotes that I've seen online that I thought were quite interesting for this film. And this is in relation to a lot of the Netflix press as well, which I have touched on. But the film runs for 109 minutes, and Roxanne and Mike, they never kiss. And this sort of ties in a little bit too with the Twisters sequel that's prequel or whatever it is that's come out recently too, where they decided to cut out the kissing scene. And this film too, it's a decision that the director Farino sort of said, they debated it over a long amount of time, but they made this decision to leave fans wanting more, because Netflix always said to them, you have to think of this as a 3-movie idea. So if an audience comes out wanting a kiss, then he says, we've probably done the right thing. It's frustrating, isn't it? It's like you don't give closure on a film in the hope that it's going to do well and it's going to be picked up by Netflix for further sequels. And Halle Berry and Mark Wahlberg, they also continued, through the press conference as well, the idea about skipping this kiss, because I think Halle Berry, she said, once they kiss, then it's over. We're hoping if we get to do a second one, we'll get that chase continue. And then she said, you want to see the journey, to see these two high school sweethearts find each other. And Mark Wahlberg, he went on and said, if we get to go on and do something else, I would imagine there'll be a lot more than a kiss, but we'll have to wait to see what happens. Like, I don't know, I just find it a little bit frustrating. You don't, especially with how it's been received so far too, I can't see the likelihood of that happening unless the numbers on Netflix are massively huge. There's this website called Geek Vibes Nation, and I just wanted to quote what they wrote about this film. I thought this was like a pretty big whack. They said, the audience accepts this kind of laziness but refuses to realize they hold the power by cancelling their subscription. As a subscriber, you need to demand better from the streaming giant because you pay for a monthly premium service. The power is in our hands, yet we keep letting streamers like Netflix recycle the same garbage almost weekly. This is a paint-by-numbers filmmaking that gives streaming services a bad name. Email your provider, dig deep, channel your best Howard Beale impression, and tell them, I'm as mad as hell and I'm not going to take this anymore. You probably won't, but that means you don't have the right to complain about movies like The Union. Wow, that is a pretty feisty sort of statement. Like, I don't think there's going to be enough people that cancel their subscription of Netflix based on this film. But it does make a good point too. a lot of people subscribe to Netflix for the nostalgia reasons, I guess, and all those old TV series or old films that pop up regularly. The Netflix original base, I guess, it's tricky. They've sort of said they're going away from the awards contenders that they're focused so heavily on as well. So if we're going to get a lot of films like this, yes, you've got the big cast to draw people in, but is that what people actually want to see? The other sort of thing, there's the union's headquarters in this film. It's destroyed, and we sort of see this moment where Mike sort of asks, well, I can't remember if it was Mike or Roxanne. They ask about the body count, and he's like, "Well, we'll focus on that later." It's like, how later? The third film? Like they didn't close that up, and that was a little bit frustrating. It's just like one of those lines of dialogue that meant nothing, and I didn't get why it needed to be there. Anyway, I've spoken enough. I'm ready to wrap this up. We give the films a rating out of 5 on the show. For me, like I couldn't help but think the whole film that Wahlberg and Berry are much better than this. It's still a fine film for Netflix, I guess, to add to their catalogue and get some big views for the first few weeks, and then it's sort of going to disappear into the Netflix ether, I guess. And if that's what they need, then that's what they've... I don't know, it's frustrating. Do they want to make films for people to enjoy, or are they just making films to get eyeballs on the screen? I'm not sure. I'm giving this a 2.5 out of 5. It's not the worst Netflix film at all, and I reckon I'm probably one of the most credited people who could discuss Netflix films with our huge back catalogue of 380 or odd Netflix original films that we've covered. So 2.5 out of 5 for me. We're on socials. We've got Instagram, we've got Facebook, and we have X, formerly known as Twitter. The question I wanted to put out for this episode is what's a better name for the organization other than the union? It's like anything, like anything secretive, anything that's cool. I don't know. It just feels like such a crappy title, the union. Like if you've got a bunch of all these, and I guess part of this film too is it's like they're taking all of these everyday sort of people to sort of bring them together to work together. Like come up with something creative, like the union. It just anything's better than that. All right, I'm done. Thanks for hanging out. Hope you've enjoyed this bonus episode. By the time this comes out, it's only going to be a couple of hours until our regular Monday episode anyway. So give us a subscribe, give us a like, give us a listen, share us if you can. We appreciate it. And I will see you every Monday continuing forward for our regular episodes.